and welcome to the Bella Vista Radio Club's June virtual meeting. My name is Tom Northfeld, Whiskey 5 X-Ray November Alpha, and I am the current president of BVRC. Thanks for joining us tonight. I hope you and your family is doing well and in good health. We have changed the format for these presentations slightly. Instead of the presentations being live, they have been pre-recorded. This has allowed for editing and hopefully diminished technical difficulties. The following is a list of BVRC club members that have enthusiastically agreed to be presenters for tonight's meeting. They are opening up their shacks and giving us a virtual tour. I believe this is another great group of amateurs that you, the audience, will find interesting and informative. We have with us Bonner, KI5DUV, and his lovely wife, Faith, KI5EQL. Next we have Vincent Carter, K5VCA, his niece, Clara Orvin, KI5HTX, and Claire's dad, Jerry Orvin, KI5FPD. Next we have Mark Whittlesey, W0KYZ, Nick Kennedy, WA5, BDU, Mark Watley, K5XH, and John Bryant, N5SU. I want to thank these presenters in advance for their willingness to share, and a big shout out to Wayne Patton, K5UNX, for putting this all together. Well, now it's time to sit back and enjoy. The tour begins right now.
Thank you, Tom, and fellow BVRCers. Welcome to our wooded hillside overlooking Greater Elkins metropolis. I'm first going to show you one of my wire antennas. Being a poor boy, I can't afford those fancy towers, so probably have to hire a logging crew just to clear a space for it, as this is 20 acres of all woods. This particular antenna is a 40-meter off-center fed dipole with a Ballon Designs 4-to-1 and 1-to-1 Ballon to keep the RF off the coax. And that gaudy pool noodle there is my feeble attempt to keep the coax from banging in the gutter, making a loud noise. Kind of works, but YL says no, need to take another look at it. My shack is right below the foyer there, kind of behind the bear but down under, and this coax comes on down the side of the garage door opener and through a ground rod mounted surge protector, and then you can see it loops on around and back into the house, takes a route into the back of the closet, and I've got a raceway in the closet that ports all these coaxes down into the shack. This is around the side of the house, the ugly side. I try to not show anyone this, so this is a rare view for you guys. But anyway, there's my 35-foot telescoping fiberglass mask, and up at the top is the 80-meter, 75-meter dipole. I hope you can see up at the very tip top is a dual band UHF VHF ground plane. This air conditioner would be running. I'm a firm believer in keeping the lightning outside, and so during thunderstorms I disconnect these coaxes. It's a little inconvenient with especially if you have to run out inside the rain, but it beats the heck out of burning the house down. So wife's pretty tolerant, but she probably wouldn't like that at all. Okay, now we're in the basement, approaching the ham shack via the man cave, or better known as the Jimmy Buffett Museum. But that's a whole another story. You know, it's you're getting old though when you have to have a clock that tells you what day of the week it is. Remember the line 8 by 12 4-bit room from Roger Miller's King of the Road? Well, this is a 8 by 8 2-bit room. It's a tiny little shack, and you can see it's full of tools and junk. Whoop, can't miss that Washington State, so that's my only award so far. This is just an area on back under the stairs. It gets a little low in the ceiling back there. This was a throwaway space underneath the foyer, and it was designed originally when I was out of the hobby as just a workbench. And of course, never looking ahead, I'm still living with it and suffering with this draftsman stool to be high enough to play radio. Anyway, as you can see, there's not much to see because I literally had to start over from scratch when I renewed my interest in the hobby. The ICOM 7410 is my most prized piece of gear. Let me turn that thing down. I've got some squawking on the air there. And it drives the old green frog there, SB200, that I put a new power board in, replaced all the old caps. And then we're going through an old AT1000 auto router. And that eventually comes over to this coax switch, which selects my 2 antennas or a dummy load. And that black box behind there is just an old power disconnect, which I've modified to utilize as a way to break completely clean from the shack ground, which you saw going, it goes to that ground rod up there in front of the foyer. I'm a firm believer, again, disconnect everything, antennas, ground system, and unplug the master power cord. I'd probably make this whole room a Faraday cage if I ever got another one of those round turrets. This, of course, is my shack computer, which I just recently updated. It's running a HD SDR now, which is poor boy's way of adding a PAN adapter to monitor the activity on the band. And this thing's speedy fast. I didn't pay much for it. It's not the latest and greatest, but it does have an SSD hard drive in it, or I guess you wouldn't call that a hard drive, but it boots up in just a matter of a few seconds, and accesses programs a lot quicker than before. It's a Dell with a i7 processor, quad core. And really the only thing left to show is my Nisei knockoff 30 amp power supply for the 7410, and an old ICOM 2720 dual band 2 meter 70 centimeter that I use to work all the local repeaters. And then of course there's my relatively new Ukrainian single lever paddle, which I did an article on for the Signal, you may have read. Right here are a couple of switches that I cobbled together. The one on the right is because the SB200 has no operate standby switch. I made my own by interrupting the 12 volt supply to the relay that keys my amplifier. Works great. This other thing is a couple of switches that go directly to the 7410 antenna connector, and it allows me to switch to the external tuner, bypass the internal tuner, and then that momentary tune switch, of course, allows the 7410 to activate a 10 watt carrier for tuning the auto tuner. So that's about the size of things here, or as they say in showbiz, that's a wrap. Back to you, Tom.
Hi, I'm Nick Kennedy, WA5BDU, and just a few words about me before we take the tour of the ham shack. I started out in ham radio at age 13 in Subiaco, Arkansas, which is about halfway between Russellville and Fort Smith on the south side of the river. Spent most of my working life down in Russellville, and then a year and a half or so ago we decided to move up here to northwest Arkansas. I guess 2 of our 3 kids live up here, and plus I'm a U of A grad. I even operated W5YM back in the late 60s a little bit, so kind of bringing it back home. All right, now we'll take a look at the ham shack. Okay, so now the camera is off of me, and that takes a lot of the pressure off, and I can show you some of the stuff that's on my operating desk first. First of all, I feel lucky to have this L-Craft K3 transceiver, which I assembled from a no-solder kit back in 2007, I believe. It's a really fine rig with excellent human engineering. Really good CW rig, and I'm a CW guy, so little Begali product placement there. Then next comes the Yaesu FT991 Alpha, which is a nice rig, and I guess a good question is, why do I need 2 high-performance all-band rigs on my desk? And well, for one thing, I use this for mobile. I like to work HF mobile sometime, especially during Arkansas QSO parties, so it's good for that. Also needed a rig that would cover 2 meters and 70 centimeter FM and all band. And the K3 is just HF plus 6, so it fills that need. And then another thing, which is kind of a true confession, is I've been operating FT8, and it's pretty great for that because it has the built-in codecs for audio, so I don't need any audio patch cables. Just it's all done via the USB cable, which is really nice. Okay, let's see. I'll back out a little bit. There's another true confession. I've got this amplifier, which is, I'm a long-time QRPer, so it's a little bit of a shock, but I saw it used at the Dallas Ham Fest, and I thought, well, I've been a ham 50 years. I've never had an amp. I'll get one. So I bought this Ameritron AL811, 500 or 600 watts out. For a number of years, I never really used it except occasionally on 160, but lately with the sunspots as they are or as they aren't, I've been finding a little bit more use for it, and it's a pretty nice amp. And finally, I wanted to highlight my Johnson Matchbox, which is kind of neat because it's a boat anchor that doesn't really have to apologize for sitting on a modern ham desk. It really does a fine job if you like to use balanced line. Which I do. Alrighty, so that's the operating desk, and next we're going to take a look at the overall ham shack. Okay, we looked at my radio operating desk. Now I want to show the overall room, and you can see how lucky I am to have this big bedroom all to myself. Other than operating, my main ham activity, I guess, is homebrewing and programming, which I do a lot of. So I got a lot of parts, a lot of junk, a lot of partially completed projects. So first of all, over here in the corner is my main workbench area. Got my solder iron and DMM, an oscilloscope, and so forth. This this project, which has been sitting there forever, keeps evolving, is a phasing type receiver that worked out pretty well. I've been working on over the years. It has an SI 570 VFO. I'm having a hard time getting a shot at it. But I decided to add a transmitter to this thing so I could have a full transceiver. I got this bag of parts amplifier from eBay. No instructions. The design was kind of screwed up, but I managed to get it going. It'll put out maybe 50 watts. Don't hold the key longer for than 2 seconds or so. So, and you'll be all right. And then sometimes the projects I'm working on need to interface to some computer instrumentation, or if it's an Arduino or something, I'm programming it off the computer. So I come over here close to my operating desk and my PC for that purpose. Current project here, I programmed another synthesizer. It's a SI 5351 chip, and the neat wrinkle was it could be programmed to have I and Q outputs. They're 90 degree shifted outputs, so that forms the basis for a phasing receiver or a transmitter. So after I completed a VFO, I thought, well, I got to do something with it. So I'll try a single sideband exciter. That's these two boards. Now, for several years now, I've been doing my own boards with the toner transfer method, which works really well. But I use surface mount. It makes it a lot easier. I like surface mount, but I'm a little challenged in the vision department lately on these really tiny parts. So this was kind of an experiment because I hadn't done any in a couple of years, and I did these a few weeks ago. Actually worked out pretty well, and I was able to get the parts mounted and get it functional. This is the audio board. It does the phase shift on the audio. This is the modulator board. Takes the audio and then the phase I and Q from the synthesizer and creates a single sideband signal, which I'm still testing to see if it's a clean signal or not. Puts out a couple of milliwatts, so got a way to go on that. All right. Another thing, as far as being a home brewer, you see lots of bins full of parts here. Parts in little envelopes, resistors, capacitors, parts in these cabinets. I have an Excel spreadsheet, so I can look for a part and it'll tell me, which bin it's in. This is 3B3 is where this transistor is. Otherwise, I'd never find them. I always like to say I've got more parts than DigiKey or Mouser, which isn't too much of an exaggeration. And also, I've got parts to build from 3 different eras. The tube era, the parts with leads from the 70s and 80s, leads and pins, and now surface mount parts. So that's fun. And it's nice to be able to build a project without having to order any parts because you've already got them all. All right, next is boat anchors. I tell myself I'm not a collector, and I'm not, but this is a Hallicrafter's HT40. One of these was my first commercial transmitter. Here's a Heath VFO, VF1 VFO. I also see a couple of QRP transceivers here. I built lots of those. On the bottom, Hallicrafter's S40 receiver. My mentor had one when he demonstrated amateur radio back in 1961. I always wanted one. Now I got one. Here's some keys. And once again, I'm not a collector. There's Blackie. But they do tend to accumulate. And speaking of boat anchors and home brewing and tubes, here's a regen receiver I did a few years ago, but just a couple of months ago I did a 6v6 audio amplifier, a loudspeaker amplifier you might say, so it could drive a speaker. Previously it could only drive phones, and that was fun, and it worked out pretty well. So that's the rest of the inside of the ham shack, and I hope we'll have time to just briefly discuss my antennas next. Okay, most important I guess is the antennas. Here's my nice backyard. And here is the matching unit for my 134-foot end-fed long wire. End-fed half wave on 80 meters anyway. But you might recall a presentation that was done by Skype by, I think, N4LQ, Steve Ellington. And I have one of these. I built the matcher. My wire runs maybe 40, I hope, or maybe even more up this tree. Then the rest of it goes horizontally down toward the lake, and it's a pretty good antenna. Now, if I want to work 160 with it, I take that matcher off, and it's a quarter wave inverted L. I've got a couple of radios out, only 2, but it does a pretty decent job on 160. And then I decided I needed another antenna. So, like I said, I like this ladder line stuff. I think it looks great for one thing, but it also works great. I have a 88-foot dipole. I doubt if you can see the wire, but it goes up in that tree. It may be 40, if I'm hopeful it may be 45 feet. This thing runs into my Johnson matchbox and works out pretty well on several bands. So that's the antenna situation. All right. Okay, so I was going to turn the camera around, but I saw what a handheld selfie looks like, and it's not a pretty sight. So I'll show you this view and say thanks for watching. 73 from WA5.
Hello everybody, I'm Mark, K5XH, and I'd like to welcome you to my humble little radio shack here. I'm standing back over in the corner right now, so I'm going to pan around here so you can get an idea of the scope of the room that we're in here. Not very big, but anywho, there is my normal operating position, and I'm going to go over and sit down at my favorite chair here. And one thing you'll probably notice right off the bat, particularly if you're not familiar with the type of equipment that I'm using, is that there's not anything here that looks a lot like a radio. There are a few clues. If I pan over here, you can see my old Heil lightweight headset. If I go back over here, there's my Kent key. And kind of in the middle here, underneath this center monitor, a couple little boxes. Those are two Elecraft watt meters. And if I look a little bit further over here, there's a little box with a knob on it, like a tuning knob. And as you might guess, that is used to occasionally tune the radio. And it's the only knob that really I have in here that is directly connected to the radio and can affect the radio. So if I pan over a little bit further, I'll show you where the actual radio is. It is sitting over here under this shelf, and it's a Flex 6600. And the only control on it is the on-off switch, the green light. If I pan a little bit further, there's a couple of rotor controllers there, and then up on top of this shelf, move a little closer, is an IC 7100 that I use on UHF, VHF occasionally. There's a power supply up there. Above that, there's a panel that has all of the antenna connections that come into the shack, come through that panel. And those pieces of coax that you see just kind of hanging off there, not connected to anything except for the one with the red tag on it. Those are the various antennas that get connected there. There's bulkhead connectors and push-on adapters on the ends of those cables, so those things can be very quickly pushed on or pulled off in the case of weather. And then the black connector right there is all the rotor cables come in through that connection, so I can unhook everything that comes into the shack from the outside at that panel. Of course, it's grounded. There's a ground bus back in here behind all this stuff that has everything hooked to it. There's another rotor controller up here. This is for the 2-meter antenna that I've got. So if I back up a little bit, the remainder of the RF equipment is here. I built this cabinet here mainly to hold those two pieces of equipment. That's an MFJ tuner and a Flex Radio PGXL amplifier. And then down in this cabinet is a bunch of other stuff. If I open it up here and show you what's inside of it, there's a nest of coax in there. The big black thing in the middle is an antenna switch. It's a 2x8 type switch. You can switch two radios to one of 8 different antennas. I'm not using the whole thing right now. I think I'm using 6 of the connectors plus one other one for the that dummy load. The big metal can there obviously is a oil-filled dummy load. if you look at the top here, if I back up a little bit, those two little boxes at the top that you can see the ends of, those are two Elecraft power sensors that drive the little watt meter displays that are over here under the monitor that I showed you. And with that said, that's really all the RF equipment that I've got in this shack right now that's hooked up. I'll swing back over here to the monitors. Those of you familiar with Flex Radio probably recognize that pretty quick. That's the normal display for the Flex. Smart SDR, I think they call it. That is the way the screen normally looks if I'm just doing casual operation. Leaves the other two monitors available for whatever else I want to do with them. QRZ, DX Summit, or DX Maps or something else. So that in a nutshell is the basic station, but I might explain a little bit about why I have all that coax down there in that box and all that antenna switch and everything. I've always been an aficionado of the RTTY operation, and I particularly like to operate one particular contest every year, which is the RTTY Roundup, which is in January every year, early January. So, long about 3 or 4 years ago, I kind of decided that I would see if I could improve my score. Most of the big gun guys operate a method, contesting method called SO2R, which is single operator 2 radios. So in 2017, I decided to give that a shot. I had my old Flex 5000 as one radio, and I used that little IC 7100 up there on the shelf. I used it as the other radio. And I really cobbled together an SO2R station. It had 2 amplifiers, it had an OSB 200 and a Henry 2K, and off I went. And I had no idea what I was doing. It's a wonder I hadn't destroyed one of the radios or the other ones. But I wound up placing in the top 10 US and Canada that year, so that made me pretty happy. And also that year I went to Dayton, which is 2017. It was the first year it was really not at Dayton. And Flex had come out with this new line of radios here, and so I ordered one of them. And the good thing about this radio is it has 2 completely independent receiver chains in it, and then a common transmitter chain, and that lends itself quite well to SO2R type operation. The amplifier also is capable of SO2R operation because it can switch pretty quickly between one band and the other. Now for those of you who may not know what that is exactly, it's basically you use 2 radios, 2 amplifiers, you operate on one band on one radio, an amplifier set, you operate on another band, and you just try to make as many contacts as you can. The only restriction is you cannot transmit but one signal at a time on any one band. In other words, you can't run both radios, can't be transmitting at the same time on 2 different bands. So the new Flex radios fit quite well into that category, and that's why I decided to go with them. So I got one radio and one amplifier that allows me to operate in that SO2R category, or it's not a category but a technique, and it's worked quite well. I've placed fairly highly in the last few RTTY contests and pretty happy with it, but that's why that have all this switching. The other reason that I did this is most guys that are doing that would have on this desk right here in front of me, they would have 2 K3s as their main radios or something similar to that, and then the monitors would be mounted up above that on some kind of shelf or one of those articulated arms or something like that. And I can't stand to look at a monitor that I have to look up at. So this whole thing of having the monitors down at more or less eye level works out a whole lot better for me and the way I operate. I'll show you just a little bit right quick that's the normal screen that we're on. What I'm going to do here is I'm going to change this over to my normal SO2R type operation, and I'll show you. You can see the screen splits into two sections, and then on the other screens over here, I'm going to bring up the N1MM logger software, which is what I normally use, and see if all this comes up. I hope. And yeah, most of it did. Okay. So that's what the center screen looks like in my contest operating mode. The other screen over here has the log and some other information on it. And the main screen controls the radio. And you can see there that there's two sections there, the top and the bottom. Those are on two different bands. The top one's on 40, bottom one's on 80. And you can call CQ, for instance, on 40, and then as soon as that CQ terminates, you call CQ on 80. And then, of course, if you work somebody, you interleave those things. That puts about 100% duty cycle on your exciter and on your amplifier, and the flex amp can stand it. I run 11 to 1200 watts in that condition for 24 hours, and it works really quite well with one amplifier and one radio that does the job of 2 and 2 normally. So one other thing I like to mention, and then I'll get out of here, is that all of this stuff, the radio, the antenna switching, and the amplifier are all connected and controlled via just Cat5 cabling. I have a little 4-port hub stuck under the table here. All the units connect to that hub. That hub then connects back to my normal little router here, and that's connected to the computer. And when I change bands, the antennas switch automatically, the amps switch automatically. It's really a pretty slick deal. Anywho, guys, such as it is, not much to look at here. I guess I could swing around and show you. I've got a little table over here that I use for when I'm working on stuff. I don't know why the lighting is kind of odd, but there's some simple test equipment over here and whatever, and that's where I do any kind of tinkering or building work that I want to do. So all in all, folks, that is the K5XH shack in a nutshell. Thank you very much. 73s.
Yeah, hi, this is Mark W0KYZ at my home QTH here, and I wanted to talk to you about a couple of issues that I've been dealing with at my station here lately, and then we'll take you on a quick tour of the station. There's two issues that I've been dealing with. I have a noise issue that's still unresolved, even though we've located the poles on the electric grid where the noise is coming from. The other issue is an issue I had with my antenna that we did get resolved. So anyway, the noise issue I tracked down with my mobile setup. I actually just took the VHF antenna and ran it into the HF port, drove around the neighborhood and tuned the radio to 17 meters, which is where the noise is very prevalent. And we finally found the offending pole, which is a little over 100 yards from the QTH here. If you pan over to the down the street there, past the red card, and that's the pole where, and there's another pole across the street there that they are both very noisy. We've had the power company out a few times here. We did find a bad lightning arrestor, which they did come out and fix, and I pinpointed that with my ultrasonic listening device here, and back. This is my ultrasonic listening device, and we could pinpoint the offending element up there, which they did come and fix right away, but it didn't affect the noise. The noise is still very prevalent on 17 meters and above. We don't hear it on 20 meters and below. So the jury's still out on this, but I do plan to make some more calls to the power company, and we'll hopefully get this fixed before the summer is over. Okay, next I'm going to take you over to the tower and we'll talk about an issue that I had with the antenna there and what we did to resolve that. Okay, this is a close-up view of the center of the beam antenna, which is a 3-element stepper, and you can see kind of at the center of the picture there's a box with a number of coax cables going into it. I'll try to zoom in a little bit on that. And we replaced that unit that has relays in it that send the signal out to each one of the 3 elements. We were having a problem tuning the antenna on 40 meters, especially during wet weather, and the thought was that possibly one of the coax jumpers or the relays themselves were being affected by the wet weather. And it only affected 40 meters only, because on 40 meters the antenna acts like a 2-element beam. It's a reflected beam, so the relays will send the signal to each one of the elements on the end, depending upon whether it's in forward or reverse direction. On all the other bands, 20 and above, it acts like a normal 3-element beam with a reflector, a driven element at the center, and a directed element at the end. And on all those bands it was fine, so it was only on 40 meters. So we've got that replaced, and so far so good. The antenna seems to be behaving itself. Okay, we're down here in my shack, and I'll just run through all the different pieces of equipment. The station is pretty much computer controlled, so we'll get into that in just a bit here, but just starting on the left side here, just a printer that's hooked to the station computer. Here is the main radio, which is a Flex 5000. That's our main rig here. No knobs on the front, but it had a nice flat spot for a Bob Heil sticker there, so we put that on there because we do operate the station with a Heil microphone. This is an old home theater that I had that I just used for sending the audio to different places, and this is my little station ID up here with a 35000 on top, which the amplifier, which is here, has a pair of those in there. We do use the amplifier quite a bit. It's a full legal limit amplifier, but we usually run it under a kilowatt. And the home theater does have a little transmitter, Bluetooth transmitter here, that we do use wireless headphones most of the time, and that works out very well since I can move around the station without any cords getting in the way. Here's the Heil microphone with the wireless headphones on it here. This is a little monitor that I use with my ICOM 7000, which is currently missing. It normally sits right here, and you can see some of the cables there, but that was the rig I was using to track down the noise problem that I was having. So that rig is still upstairs, actually out in the garage as we speak here. This unit down here, right below a speaker, a station speaker, is a SWR monitor, which is displayed right here on this monitor as well as on this monitor over here. That'll let me know if my standing wave is above normal limits here. This unit right here is an antenna switch, which they don't make anymore. It's an LDG unit, but I've had it for over 10 years and it's been completely trouble-free. And it is, I can computer control this and switch antennas. We have 2 antennas here. We have a Carolina Windham and the stepper, and there's also a dummy load hooked in there too, so I have 1 spare position left on that antenna switch. This, of course, is a computer that runs everything, and we built it from scrounged up parts, purchased parts, and so forth, and made modifications to it numerous times over the year, but it's been a good performer running Windows 10. This little guy right here is a grounding switch that we put together from an old... Okay, this switch we made from a old parallel AB switch, printer port switch, and we use it to ground the control line for the stepper controller. And I've got this little cover on so I don't accidentally ground it, which I have done once and blew a bunch of chips in the controller, but I had spares. This is our weather station down here. Right next to it is the main power supply for the station, which we've added an AC monitor as well as a DC monitor, and it sits there right nice, 13.8 volts. But we watch over time for the AC monitor. It'll vary from 114 volts up to 128 volts, but the power supply keeps it at a nice 13.8. This is the antenna controller, which has a portable display on it. It's black letters on a dark blue background, which is hard to read. This is the rotator controller, which is a white background on blue, which is much easier to see. This is just a second readout for second weather station. And on the monitors here, we have the main window to control the radio. These windows are for the tuner. This is for the stepper, for the rotator controller, SWR monitor here. This is mostly internet stuff, and then the third monitor is logging programs. And we also have a window in the lower left corner that goes out to a camera in front of the house, so we can kind of see what's going on in the front yard. So that's basically it. Thanks for watching, and just remember,
Hi all!
Hey
hello everyone.
Thanks so much for letting us get to be a part of this month's meeting. We're so excited to get to share it with you. And my name's Clara, KI5HTX. This is my dad and my uncle, KI5FPD and K5VCA, which is Vincent Carter of Arkansas. And yeah, so I got interested in ham radio from these two. And Vincent can tell you how they got interested to start.
Well, I think I initially read an article about how the Baofeng radios were going to be outlawed in the United States, and I was like, don't tell me what to do. I ordered several of those actually. I think like a 5-pack. I gave Jerry one, and we decided that we wanted to try this ham radio thing. So we started studying, and we passed our test in July of last year. So last summer, we haven't been in the hobby for quite a year. And
the Baofengs were neat. They were a great radio. They were a little tough to figure out how to program, but we got on there, and I think that Tim may have been one of our first contacts. Just a great Elmer. And Shane, that you were a great Elmer too, and talked on the radio a little bit on those Baofengs before we kind of moved around a little bit in equipment and upgraded a little bit to a little bit better stuff.
I think I went to the University of Arkansas Club meeting, and John Williams, K5 DVT, told me, man, you need the Baofeng's great, get you a mag mount. And so I did that, and I have a metal roof here, and it worked really great with the Baofeng, but quickly I wanted to upgrade that, so I got a Yaesu dual band. I think probably the most inexpensive one I could find. I'm real happy with that actually, and we'll show you some antennas here in just a moment. And then Claire, where does your story come in?
Well, so I still have no idea what they're talking about because I'm a newbie, but what I do know is that Vincent told me there was going to be this super cool presentation, and he said it was going to be about high altitude ballooning, and I didn't know what that was either. I kind of was picturing a hot air balloon, but then he dragged me along to one of the BVRC meetings, and I loved it. And I absolutely loved the presentation on the high altitude ballooning, and I'm hoping he'll let me do that with him someday with his university students. And so that's what really got me interested. And I went to the meetings for a couple months, and eventually they convinced me that I needed to take my technician test, and so I got licensed. And
in January, and that's when I upgraded to general, which was a lot of fun because in November Jerry had convinced my dad and my wife Meredith to kind of all chip in together and buy a Yaesu FT 450D, which is the radio that we've been using and is a lot of fun. And so when Claire got her license, we became a little more active on the air. Claire, you want to tell them about that? Some of the things we've done?
yeah, so K5DB, our Don, he's the best, just so you all know.
Absolutely.
And he got us to come do the rookie roundup at his house, and it was so much fun. And that was like the first time I really got to do any radio, and I didn't know what any of it meant, but he was really good and patient teaching me what everything was, and all of us. And so we did the rookie roundup, And then he basically trained us how to work on our own that day. And then,
How this contest world works,
yeah.
for sure.
And then shortly after that, we got to do the Arkansas QSO party, which was super fun. And we operated that right here in Vincent's little shack using his equipment and his call sign. And that was super fun.
All right. And we used the Yaesu with a Carolina Wyndham 80, and it's not the Radio Works, but it's kind of some pieces of one that Don K5DB had. He built an isolator or choke for me and taught me how to do that, and had some extra wire, and I got a Ballon Designs 4-to-1 Ballon for the top of that, and so we'll show you some footage of that here in just a moment. So with that, and really he told me to step that radio down to 90 watts. We've been able to talk to people all over the world. It's been a lot of fun. We had a great time at the Rookie Roundup, and we had a wonderful time working the Arkansas QSO party.
And I have to say that during this COVID-19 quarantine time, Clara has learned a lot of CW. The Long Island Radio Club has, they've reached out across the United States and across the world and invited kids or anybody to join their club and learn CW. And Robert does a great job of presenting and teaching these students how to do CW. Claire's made contacts on HF on CW. Her first contact, she's proud to say, was Don K5DB, and we got extra points a couple times on the Arkansas QSO party with the CW. If you're interested in CW at all, I would really look up that Long Island Radio Club, and Claire can tell you more about CW.
Yeah, and I'm assuming you all know what CW is, but I didn't, and it's Morse code, which is all your dits and dahs. And so my teacher, Rob, I don't remember his call, but he's part of the Long Island CW Club, and I'm now a member of that too with my grandma and grandpa. And basically during this quarantine, they've been giving free classes. You do not have to be a member to take the classes. I actually only became a member yesterday, so that's pretty cool and neat. If you have any interest in learning what CW is, you don't have to be a member to take a few classes and see if you like it.
We've had a great experience so far. I'm sorry, Jerry, what were you going to say?
She mentioned her grandparents. My parents are both extras, AC0MG and AC0VM, and they also do the VEs for tests all the way up through extra, and have been involved with ham radio for as long as I can remember. I don't know why I never got involved earlier. I didn't know how much fun I could have, so I'm really grateful that we are getting involved now, and Claire and I can't wait to get our generals so that we can get a little bit more airtime on the HF side.
All right.
Yeah.
And anyways, we would just want to thank the Bella Vista Radio Club for being so kind, and thanks to Tom and to Don and to everyone else who's been so patient and kind with us as we're learning how this wonderful hobby works. In fact, Don was over here just a few minutes ago. My wife got me a signal link for an early Father's Day present, and so I'm giving the FT8 a shot, and so he set me up and got me rolling on that, and I'm looking forward to a late night tonight working the FT8.
And Tom, thank you so much for the paddle that you gave Claire to start that whole CW process. It's been a lot of fun.
It's been amazing, and the paddle has worked great for all my classes, and I absolutely love it. And my grandpa got me a paddle key, so I've been using the straight key for practice, but also messing around with it, and it's so much fun.
Absolutely. Anyways, thanks for having us, everyone. Welcome to our humble shack here, and have a great evening.
Bye.
Well, I hope you found these presentations to be enjoyable and informative. Thank you for being a participant. Your comments, questions, and suggestions are welcome and encouraged. Please address these to info@bellavista.radioclub.org. That's info@bellavista.radioclub.org. Also, for more information on the Bella Vista Radio Club, please visit our website at bellavista.radioclub.org. 73, stay safe. Good evening from W5XNA.